Welcome to Spokane Talks, where you find news, views, and conversation that includes respect for opinions, facts, and diversity. Spokane Talks is brought to you in part by McNeese Wheeler Attorneys and Rana Paint.
Welcome to this special edition of Spokane Talks. I'm Ryan McNeese. In this episode, I'll have an opportunity to sit down with Christina Anderson, 2007 survivor of the Virginia Tech shooting, and discuss her foundation, the Koshka Foundation, discussing the complexities of surviving a tragic incident and learning from past incidents, followed by Adam Jackson, commercial and professional banker at Mountain West Bank.
Hi, this is Larry at River Ridge Hardware. Just wanted the opportunity to show you a little bit about our Christmas. We have Christmas tree stands. We have ornaments that you won't find anywhere else. We have the small Christmas lights. We have the tube lights that you can run up and down. We also have a massive amount of snow shovels. Come on out and visit River Ridge Hardware.
The following is sponsored by our friends and community supporters at McNeese Wheeler Attorneys. McNeese Wheeler is a boutique law firm in Spokane, handling matters in both Washington and Idaho. Areas of law include business law, wills, trusts and estates, family law, personal injury and wrongful death, and real estate matters. For your full-service legal needs, contact McNeese Wheeler Attorneys.
Welcome to the show. I'm Ryan McNeese, and we have the unique pleasure to have Christina Anderson here in the studio with us. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Obviously, extremely important topic. We're here talking about school safety, and you are a survivor, 2007 Virginia Tech shooting. It goes without saying, an unbelievable an event. Talk to us a little bit about that, and then we'll move forward as to what that has led to on a positive note in your life and for the endeavors that you've done in the years since.
Absolutely. So the shooting happened in April 2007. It was April 16th, a very dreary, typical cold Monday morning, and I was a student at Virginia Tech, so I was about halfway through my academic career. I was doing international studies and foreign languages, and that morning I was headed to a French class, which many of my friends, later thought that I would skip class. They didn't believe that I was there. I was not the best student at that point.
I wished you weren't there.
Exactly, yeah. But the shooting happened in a building that I was not very familiar with, and so what we didn't know was that the perpetrator, who was a student also at Virginia Tech, he had planned quite extensively for the attack. So he had purchased chains in advance to lock the door shut from the inside. And so shortly after myself and my friend that drove me to class that morning went to the building, he kind of followed in afterwards. He chained the door shut and went to the second floor, which is where the shooting occurred. And for about 11 and a half minutes, he would walk into about 4 or 5 different classrooms and open fire. And unfortunately, it's a mathematics engineering building. So we all have these very small constricted spaces.
Right.
Were all taken by surprise. I did not realize it was gunshots, initially. Your head doesn't usually go to.
Well, and I've heard individuals in other issues talk about that it sounds like something different, or it's not equating at the time.
Right, because gunshots, I would imagine, I'm not too familiar with weapons. I don't like them for reasons you can probably understand. It's a separate issue. But gunshots, depending on the caliber and the type of space that you're in, so echoes and how wide and how deep walls are. I mean, all those things play into how it sounds. Plus, remember, it's 9:15 on a Monday morning, and you're sitting in a building, right?
In French class.
Yeah. Whether you're a receptionist or you're in a hospital or you're working, your first thought isn't, oh, someone's shooting inside of this.
Those are obviously gunshots.
spots.
It's outside psychological expectation.
Exactly. And your mind tries to find logic and reasoning as to what that is. Well, that inevitably takes some time. And often because of the level of preparation the attacker has taken, you might have only a few seconds. And so I've also interviewed other survivors, and we often hear for the explanation of noise, construction work, fireworks sometimes is a descriptor. But now with other survivors, we're very attuned to loud noises, escalating sounds, dishes clanging, things like that. So he, very quickly kind of burst into our room. None of our rooms had locks, so it was very hard to barricade a door if you didn't have the time to do so. And he would come in about three times total, and I was shot in the back.
Came in and out of your particular room 3 times?
Yes. So he walked in and just opened fire very, very quickly, unfortunately, and not a lot of time to understand what was happening and to prepare and things like that. And every single person but one in my classroom was wounded. So he left. He essentially has, the entire hallway blocked off and kind of has access to it. So we have one room where thankfully the students were able to keep the door closed the entire time. They put desks and their bodies up against the door. We have another classroom where students jumped out of the window. So they jumped 19 feet to the sidewalk. So they had broken limbs and things like that, but they thankfully survived. Our room, I think just by the virtue of the surprise factor and things like that, there was very little movement, an opportunity to react. And so now one of the things that I teach and talk about is the ability to safely go check, what is that sound, and either to take your own personal action to leave or call the police, or to notify your coworkers or your classmates, whatever the situation might be, can be very, very helpful for people in that situation.
Well, and the psychology is immense. I think we could literally talk for hours about the different types of things that are going through your mind in terms of you're laying on the floor, hiding behind the respective desks that you indicate. What are you thinking at that particular moment, or are you? It's more of a fight or flight, probably.
It's very much a fight or flight, unless you have prepared your body and your mind to respond to those types of events, which is really only on a tactical law enforcement level that could be reached.
Not at 9:30 in the morning.
Not as a student
right.
that, yes, is barely knows her way to class. Yeah. Could barely drive a car probably, without enough coffee. It's hard to comprehend, and the sheer level of, I'm often asked, did he say anything? Should one negotiate in that way? Unfortunately, if you're faced that type of predatory violence, they've already made their decision for what they're going to do, and so there's very little time for you to interrupt or to potentially talk to them. They've often kind of put their testimony in an interview, in a handwritten manifesto. They know they're going to die that day, so you don't have a lot of time. So I was thinking, obviously, what's going on, trying to assess the level of risk and concern. Often, this is what I did, you look around at those around you. And so if people aren't moving, if people aren't seeming to be, worried or alert, you're just kind of like, no one wants to overreact and be that person who's
right.
like, run or get out.
Which is never a situation you've ever been in to identify with how you act. Yeah.
Many of us have very few previous experiences to draw upon. We really only get fire drill training as we grow up in the educational system. And so my professor went in the hallway, and the way that she came back, the look on her face, the change in color, plus we hear gunshots in the hallway as they're moving up, you start to put two and two together. And so I got very quickly under my desk. The desks were all one unit type of, heavy kind of tools. And so I put my feet under that, my stomach on the seat, and essentially was preparing for an earthquake type of, I went to school in California for a few years, so the training of, get down low and don't move. In earthquake drills, you don't move around. You just
right.
stay there until someone tells you to move. Helped. I was in the back of the room. I had some advantageous positioning in that he was never directly close to me. And thankfully he missed.
So right after this event, and of course there's pictures that have been national, global, et cetera, of you after this event, what goes through your mind as a survivor? Obviously there's the psychology of parents and friends that are involved, of those that have been lost, but I'd imagine there's an interesting and unique psychology as a survivor. That, why didn't you pass? You were shot 3 times, critically wounded. What goes through your mind as a survivor?
Everything in your life changes as a survivor. For me personally, the things I eat, how I have conversations with people, how quickly do you tell someone that you survived this event? Now it's been almost 12 years. So dating,
Right.
Thanksgiving, like every single aspect changes. And to your point, the concept of survivor's guilt is one of the most frequent and probably inevitable ones. I can't tell you why he did this, and I can't tell you why I survived. And those are the most difficult things to sit with. You naturally start to go through, all the what ifs. And it took me a couple of years with really great therapists and really trained practitioners to understand that I was having normal reactions to a very abnormal situation and that it wasn't my fault. And that, the biggest grief is that 11 of my classmates passed away and they were my age. So as I get older, I have decisions that I take that I can make that they don't have the right to do, right? And so I think about, am I living my best life? Am I doing things for the right reasons?
That phrase that you just utilized, am I living my best life?
I think that's probably an Oprah phrase. But
Well, I think it is an appropriate phrase because I think how you've taken this tragedy is commendable in terms of you just indicated, I can't change or know why I didn't pass away. But what you have done, you've started a foundation called the Koshka Foundation.
Yes.
So identify for us what the purpose, the goal, what you've been accomplishing with the Koshka Foundation.
So the goal is to provide education and training for schools, organizations, law enforcement on how to prevent these types of incidents from happening. It's trying to gain more awareness for that we all have a personal responsibility to be aware of situations, to report those, and essentially using the stories of survivors. So I work with individuals who have survived Columbine High School, many school shootings, workplace incidents, to frame their experiences in a way that helps someone else understand that this could happen to you. I travel places where someone will still tell me this will never happen in my community. And I've been to Littleton, Colorado. I've been to, obviously, Virginia Tech and a lot of other sites. No one thinks it's going to happen to them.
Right, the movie theater incident.
In Aurora, exactly.
Colorado.
It's never indicative of the place. It's the people that are in the place that you want to take care of. It's the people in the place who will inevitably make up how strong that safety culture is. Locks and doors and cameras, all those things are very important as well. But if we allow the person who doesn't work there anymore to walk into you and they're looking for their spouse, you've now defeated all the security systems that you've paid for. So our shooter was on our campus for about 2 years exhibiting some pretty strange behaviors that were never shared or communicated. And that's where I want them to pay attention and to speak up and to take those to appropriate channels. So the foundation works to help either increase awareness for the prevention aspect, sometimes the response of active shooter training, what do you do if type of scenarios. And then often we also consult with, after an event has occurred, as you can imagine, the long-term recovery for what do you do at the 6-month, 9-mark, 2-year mark, it changes. So we try to get some perspective based on those that have been there to just give them different examples of what's appropriate.
What can we learn is probably the overall theme.
Absolutely.
And thankfully, you are here in Spokane, having an opportunity to speak at Gonzaga University on School Safety Forum. And unfortunately, as you're well aware, we also had a shooting here in Spokane at Freeman High School. So you being here, appreciate it. It couldn't be more relevant as to further ideas of what can we learn. What do you think with the panel here in Spokane? How are we going to encompass how we can move forward and learn from these events?
So the first focus of the panel is on the shared responsibility for safety and security. So we have some really great different perspectives from education, from threat assessment, from school policing, restorative justice angles, for the sense that school safety is much broader than shootings. It's about culture and about keeping everyone happy and safe and positive in the environment. From a moving forward and kind of, it's, I think, thinking about how do we honor those that are affected? How do we take care of all the students that maybe have gone to school in Freeman, right? Or have siblings that knew someone who was impacted? A lot of times people will say things like, well, I wasn't in that school, or I wasn't shot. And so they're going to stay in our school system without realizing that they also have traumatic responses that are valid around the anniversary, around that time of year. Everyone's going to remember where they were the day of, in September of last year. And so almost saying that it's okay to have those reactions and that you should take care of yourself and honor that.
Well, and for you personally, I'd imagine as you lead up to these respective anniversaries, you probably physically and emotionally go through some
Different stages.
Yeah, specific stages. Talk to us a little bit about that.
It's taken a few years to figure out that the anniversary is a really important year and a hard time. So I usually try to make a mental checkpoint in March, so about a month before the anniversary, to exercise more, to eat better, take care of myself, things like that. I realize that I'm almost like preparing for a funeral is how it feels like, because the rest of the year you can distract yourself with work, with personal engagements, with, I'm still involved in this field, so just learning and whatever, traveling. But then you come back to, I'm also a victim and a survivor of the event, and that it kind of grounds me to be near my family again, to make sure that I'm just spending some more time with them and acknowledging the event, but not staying too deeply in the facts of April 16th, 2007. But it's just a reminder for my family and I that life is very precious. We usually have dinner together. Sometimes I'll get a strange gift from my parents. I got a suitcase one year because they're very practical parents. But as a moment of like, this is your second birthday, right? We're just so happy to have you and things like that. So I sometimes will return to Virginia Tech. I've gone back several times to the memorial, and we'll be with other survivors and families as well, which is really helpful to see that.
I'd imagine that's important in the manifestations of the relationships and the psychology of meeting with survivors and being on the actual geographic location of these events.
Yeah, it's nice to be able to paint more positive and make new memories with them, because now they have children, they have spouses, we know their parents really well at this point. There was 17 that were physically injured that come back, and many of those that lost their parents and their siblings. So it's a really big community of survivors, and nobody else really understands what that experience was like.
No, and I'd imagine
them.
in your opportunities to travel throughout the country, I'd imagine you get a lot of folks saying, I understand what you've been through, and you probably do have that reaction of, no you don't.
Most people are pretty kind about saying, I feel so bad for you, I have no idea what you went through.
Can't imagine what you've gone through,
Exactly.
but not necessarily that I know what you're feeling. I think what's most impressive to me is how you've taken a horrific event that you had to endure as a young person. You're 19 years old at the time of this event, but you've taken this horrific event and turned it into such a positive. There are people throughout the country that you've been seeing, whether it be in Florida, whether it be in Colorado or California or what have you. You've made this your life's passion to help others. It's really impressive.
Thank you. I mean, we should add there are many survivors doing amazing work, either full-time capacities or part-time. There's a group called the Rebels Project, which is an online support group created actually after the Aurora movie theater shooting by Columbine grads.
What was it, Rebels?
The Rebels Project. So it was started by Columbine High School graduates. Their mascot is the Rebels. And it's an online support group for anyone who lives in a community or themselves were personally impacted by a mass shooting or any type of tragedy event. And people just post questions of, this news interview really triggered me. How do you handle watching news coverage of future events or anniversaries and support and things like that? So we call ourselves the club you don't want to belong to.
Right. But you're making the most of the fact that you do belong to the club.
Trying to.
And again, your theme, to live your best life, make the most out of this event and help others. Thank you so much for being here.
Of course.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next up on Business Talks, Adam Jackson, professional and commercial banker at Mountain West Bank. Welcome to the show. I'm Ryan McNeese, and we're here in the studio with Adam Jackson, commercial professional banker at Mountain West Bank. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
I appreciate it. You're a busy guy. Recently in the last year, nominated as 20 under 40 in Catalyst as a professional on the rise here in Spokane. And as a banker and at Mountain West Bank, a lot of resources available to you in terms of marketing. How do you go about finding the markets that you want to be involved in for your clients?
Absolutely. Over the last few years, you kind of take a assessment of where the market's going and different industries that you find interesting. And so we have a wonderful medical community here in Spokane. So I've definitely focused on the medical professionals, the dental professionals, and then CPAs and attorneys, and because you're working with a lot of those folks, getting these types of deals put together, and so try to market and network within those groups, and it kind of spreads like wildfire from there. So.
Well, and as you've indicated, I think when you do good work within a community, that word does get out there amongst the doctors, the CPAs, attorneys, et cetera. And you're right, our medical community statistically is one of the largest aspects of our economy here. In terms of what's going on with rates right now in the Federal Reserve, there's hot topics there. Do you see that as playing a significant part in the business that you're seeing?
Absolutely. I mean, anytime you talk rates, it's kind of a sensitive topic.
Absolutely.
And we definitely have seen an increase in rates over the last year. We're having to just have those conversations up front and kind of frame conversations in that aspect and say, look, a year ago, we were 100 basis points lower than we are right now, and it's not a bad thing. It's just something that we're dealing with.
I would agree, Adam. Not a bad thing, but as you indicated, something to certainly take into consideration when making long-term financial decisions about whether it's buying a dental practice or selling a dental practice. Makes sense on both sides. Also, because of your involvement in banking and within the professional community, you've been significantly involved in Hoop Fest Spokane, which has also led to an involvement as you fly out tomorrow to participate in Hoop Fest in Las Vegas. We're going to take a short little break and come back, and I would like to hear about your significant involvement in those organizations.
Perfect.
We'll be right back. Welcome back to the show. I'm Brian McNeese, and we're here in the studio with Adam Jackson and commercial professional banker, Mountain West Bank. But just before the break, we were talking about your significant involvement in Hoop Fest Spokane that has now led to participating. As of tomorrow, you're flying to Las Vegas. So tell me about both aspects, Spokane and what you're doing in Las Vegas.
Absolutely. So Spokane started when I was a kid. My dad was one of the founding board members, and I was about 4 years old when this idea was kind of hatched.
And the fact that you're 50 now.
I've aged really well.
Right,
but 30 years later, we're sitting here, and the event's going as strong as it ever has been. And that has kind of led to this opportunity to assist other communities in bringing our expertise down to Las Vegas and help them run their tournament down there.
And we've discussed this before. It's exciting that you are going to take the strategic and expertise of what's happened in Spokane to Las Vegas, but it hasn't necessarily across the country been duplicated, the success in Spokane. So it is a challenge.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And we've, for whatever reason, I mean, through a lot of, trials and whatnot, have kind of come up with this magic formula that has worked. It's worked in Spokane, and we hope to replicate that elsewhere within these other communities. So, but it is weird how it hasn't really. I mean, you think of there's much bigger markets with a lot more resources, and we still have the best product out there.
The psychology is fascinating, and I'd like to just chalk it up to, obviously, incredible strategic approach, the board, Matt Santangelo, but the loyalty of Spokane.
Absolutely.
To basketball and to Spokane as a brand.
Yep.
No, it's impressive, and I think you said nearing its 30th year. So, well, as that circles back to banking, you see a bright future?
Absolutely.
It's exciting to see. I know you've hit the ground running. You're extremely excited to be at Mountain West Bank and making inroads within our community, not only here but also in Coeur d'Alene as well.
Yep, absolutely. I mean, the bank was founded over in Coeur d'Alene 25 years ago, and we've just tried to be a staple and good steward of the business community. So I'm very excited.
Thank you, Adam. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you so much, Ryan.
Thank you for joining us on this special edition of Spokane Talks. Please join us next week for more news, views, and conversation.
Spokane Talks is about you. Give us your feedback and comments at info@SpokaneTalksMedia.com. Spokane Talks is brought to you in part by McNeese Wheeler Attorneys and Rada Paint. We'll be back next week with additional news, views, and conversations. Please join us. So long for now.